I would just like to say that I'm really happy to have this opportunity to talk to you all this evening here from the small town of Burns in Eastern Oregon. Uh, I took a job with the BLM in November of 2023 because it allowed me to concentrate my work in the area where I've been doing my research for the last 20 years or so. And so I ended up finding a way to get over into the country. Really excited to be here tonight talking to you. And I was very generously offered the opportunity to come and talk to you in person in Calgary. Unfortunately, because of where I now live, uh, it's 150 miles in any direction to a decent airport to fly out of, and the weather conditions have been really quite crazy this winter, and so I just could not rely on the weather to allow me to get out and up to see you. So it just seemed the best way to do this on Zoom, and so I wish I could be there with you, but we'll do it this way for now. So the picture that you're looking at is right now is a picture of the Rimrock Draw rock shelter. It's a very modest rock wall. It's about 20 meters long, and it's located along the edge of a stream channel. And we have done considerable amount of work at the rock shelter since 2011. And so some of that work includes excavation, establishing stratigraphic trenches to look at the stream channel deposits. You can see me standing on this rock and my shadow being cast in that bare patch of earth right there in the middle of the photo. That is the direction that the stream channel flows that goes by this rock shelter and off into the distance. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the rock shelter and talk about some of the dates that we have been getting out of this location since we started work in 2011. So Rimrock Drive Rock Shelter is a small rock shelter that is located in the northwest portion of Harney County in the state of Oregon. So when you look at this map of the state, you can see the lush green landscape that is to the west toward the Pacific Ocean. In the center, approximate third is the Cascade Range that comes down from the from Washington all the way through to become the Sierra Nevadas in California. And then over in that tan territory is the very northernmost portion of the Great Basin of Western North America. And so Rimrock Draw sits in the northwest part of the Great Basin, and it is fed, that whole basin is fed by streams coming in from all directions, and including Malheur and Harney Lakes, which you can see as the two blue patches over to the east of the Red Triangle. So it's very desolate, what some people call desolate country, part of the Great Sagebrush Steppe of the Northern Great Basin, and to me, one of the most beautiful places in the world. So we got into working at Rimrock Draw because I was teaching archaeological field schools for the University of Oregon. Started at 2000 as a grad student, and continued at various places until we started getting interested. Me and Scott Thomas, who was then the district archaeologist for the Burns BLM, where I now work, we started trying to predict where Paleo-American sites are located on the landscape. And we're working at a couple of other places, and Scott was traveling back and forth on the 2-track road, bringing us supplies, and he saw a shadowy sort of a basalt fold off in the distance from the main dirt road coming in. And he stopped to have a look, and this is what it looked like at rim rock draw when he first saw it. So it's very modest. The rock wall is only about maybe 5 meters high, a little higher in some places, and about 20 meters long. And it was mostly considered by the cattle to be a great place to shade up and be protected from the sun during the hottest part of the day, or from the winds and storms during worse conditions. And so Scott took a look, and he noticed that the sagebrush was about 6 to 8 feet tall, which indicated there was a lot of wet sediments and with lots of nutrition that was feeding those plants. He noticed also that the rock shelter surface didn't have any stone tools or chipping debris or anything that suggested that there was a cultural site there. But the area surrounding this little cleft in the basalt was surrounded with thousands and thousands of pieces of obsidian, chipping debris or debitage, stone tool fragments of various kinds. And so when he looked at that, he thought, well, it's probably the case that this site has not been looted or disturbed in any way for a long time, because obviously there's a big site there in other ways. So we started looking at working at the site and maybe doing a test excavation there. And this was in 2009. We were working with a volunteer group called the Oregon Archaeological Society. When I was teaching field schools, we included the Archaeological Society as volunteers on my projects, and they did pedestrian surveys and a variety of excavations, test excavations, some data recovery. They were involved in my project, volunteering tens of thousands of hours of labor over time to the effort. But at this point, we knew there was something interesting here, and we wanted them to get a look at what was on the ground surface surrounding the site, see if they could find any diagnostic stone tools and such. And so in 2010 and 2011, they did large-scale surveys around the surface of the site to look for diagnostic stone tools. And they found enough Paleo-American stone tools at that time to suggest that we had a really old site, and part of it was protected right up against this rock wall. So that they did the surveys. We came out in September after our field school at another location and did some test excavation. And we got over 1.5 meters in below the ground in clean, undamaged, undisturbed, what appeared to be anyway, undisturbed sediments, and decided right then that we had sufficient depth. We had lots of old artifacts. We had a reason to come back and do a full-scale field school on a project that began in 2011 and continued up until 2023. So over time, we've put in about 58 weeks. More than a year has been spent at this location. It's one of the happiest years of my life in retrospect. So this is what it looked like in 2016 before we had the shade cloths up, and we had the sandbags out of our main excavation units. So when we excavate at a site, we screen the sediment through an 1/8-inch screen, and then collect all of the screen material, put it in sandbags, and then use that to backfill our excavation units so that we can take those sandbags out and get back to work without having to shovel out sediment like we used to in the bad old days 15, 20 years ago. Excuse me. So this is with the sandbags out, with the excavation going, and things in a nice orderly progression. So I'm going to talk about a lot of different things tonight, but one of the things I wanted to do first off is put you in front of the radiocarbon dates that we're getting from the site, because I want you to think about the way that these radiocarbon dates are structured. So the first 10 or so radiocarbon dates are on plant materials that have come from above an area where we had a huge rockfall somewhere back in time that separated the more recent deposits at the site from the older deposits at the site. And so when you look at this list, these are all AMS radiocarbon dates, and the top list above the red rockfall and bold are all from about 4,000 to about 10,000 calendar years. They're calibrated years, and they're on things like sagebrush, willow, sediments from a trench that we worked on, bulrush and wapato, which are plants that we expect to find in quiet water settings with big water somewhere nearby. So down to about 10,000 years in age, we have these sediments that contain lots of plant materials. And then we had a huge rockfall that happened before all that material was deposited. And as we break through that rockfall, we get into sediments that contain cultural materials, chipping debris, stone tools, Paleo-American artifacts that we refer to as stem points. And we see these dates that we're getting on Pleistocene animal tooth enamel. I'm looking at the second column, the Cal BP dates, because those are more directly relatable. So we have dates that begin at 13,000 years and extend back to 17 to 18,000 years in age. And that set of blue dates down there at the bottom are some test dates that I'm going to talk about a little later, but I want you to be keyed in on the fact that we have until 10,000 years ago, we have a rockfall, and then above that we have sediments that contain quite a few plant remains that have preserved pretty well in that more recent deposit. So there's material on top of the rockfall and then material protected underneath the rockfall. And so as I talk more about this will help you understand the difference chronologically from one portion of the site to the other. So water. Right now in this picture, you're looking at the top of the rock shelter. We're standing on the roof of the rock shelter and looking out over a sagebrush expanse and a dry stream channel that you can see is it's subtle, but you can see there's a clear distinction between the sagebrush that's growing along that white line and the sagebrush and the terraces that are on either side of it. One side is more obviously shaped by the basalt rims following along the stream channel. The other is a smaller, more gradual terrace that is on the north side. The top of the rock shelter is on the south side of the stream channel. So Tom Stafford, who I would like to have here with us tonight, but because of the conditions, he couldn't come. But Tom has been a valued partner. He's one of the very best radiocarbon dating specialists in the world, and Tom got interested in the site. And so every day he was working out at the site with us and doing stratigraphic studies and selecting samples for radiocarbon dating and writing a careful series of notes on his hand. And so each day, to make sure I had all of his notes, I would take a picture of his hand like this so that I could record some of the stuff off of there to put in my own notebook. And Tom is done a lot of his stratigraphy, like I said, and so he's got some real clear thoughts about the way that the sediments were deposited in front of the rock shelter. So Tom sees a three-part sequence, and what you're looking at here is Tom and one of my student supervisors, Jordan Pratt, who's now finishing her PhD. Tom and Jordan are looking at a three-part sequence. You can see the surface at the very top of this photo, and then you can see kind of a tan or buff series of very distinct, massive sediment that is windblown sand, silt, and volcanic ash from various places. So the top of it is windblown sands and silts over Mazama ash. Then you see cienega deposits or quiet waters in sediments that are associated with marshy clays. And then beneath that, you see, not so clearly in this picture, but high energy boulders, cobbles, and gravels that are associated with strong stream transport. This is a pretty clear view. There's a very clear distinction between that windblown sediment and that sediment that was accumulated in more stream focused or marshy deposits here at the site. So we did some trenching at the site, and these are some of the rounded boulders that we're getting out of the stream channel at the very bottom. So at one point, this stream was running hard and carrying massive stream flow. And we got boulders, cobbles, gravels, and lots of stuff that are associated with stream activity before 13,000 years ago. This stream is running right next to the rock shelter, and there's a couple of things that rock formations that kept the stream from directly impacting or flowing into the rock shelter and tearing out all of those sediments. Instead, what we're getting here is an accumulation in a very discrete stream channel. So we dated this portion of the site by a bison tooth that was resting right on bedrock at the bottom of the channel, surrounded by a dozen or so obsidian volcanic glass flakes that were fairly large in size and paper thin and had not been moved since the time they were deposited, so they're undamaged by stream tumble or transport or anything like that. So this is what a cienega looks like, and that's what we think the site looked like after the stream stopped flowing. So we have a big stream flow, then we have a cienega or a marshy area that looked more like this because water flow was reduced and you just don't get the same kind of sediment load coming down slope as you do when the channel ran hard. And then the other thing that we were seeing at the site that we could tell was there, and it took us forever to get to, was when we dug that trench that we showed you the boulders from just a couple of minutes ago. We saw in one end of the trench that the water, the clay that was being deposited as a result of water flow was coming from upslope. And so it appeared that there was a spring located at the site that was feeding the cienega. And when we dug the trench in the sidewall, we started to pick up things like this bison tooth right here. So bison tooth, this is a steep edge scraper, a foliate point made out of chert, and then this huge obsidian stem, western stem. So we know that not only do we have the stream and we have the cienega from more reduced stream flow, but we also have a spring that was contributing to the site as well. So in terms of water, when we look at that site now, it looks very arid. It looks like nothing could have been going on there for a very long time. And it's true, there wasn't anything going on there for a long time, but there is still water there. We hit that seep on one of the most extreme drought years in Oregon history. That was in 2021. So where is the water coming from? And here in this oval, you can see the location of Rimrock Draw Rock Shelter in relation to a stream channel that comes out of Hay Lake. And the outlet is between Hay Lake and a low ridge that's broken here, but there was a low ridge that came almost all the way up to Juniper Ridge here with a narrow notch in between it. So at one point, Rimrock Lake, Hay Lake, and Wheatgrass Lake appear to have all been part of a larger lake. And this is just figured by simply looking at topographic levels. And during the COVID year of 2020, I spent about 4 weeks out there surveying, looking for old shorelines and following stream channels and things like that to try and determine if there was a lake out there. And it appears that these three big playas here were all at one time one larger lake that was initially created sometime around 18,000 years ago, Rimrock Lake, and 19,000 at Hay Lake. And these are AMS radiocarbon dates from lake cores, from playa cores that Joe Collins took when he was doing his PhD research out here at Rimrock. So there's three lakes, three playas there now, and it looks like at one time there was a much bigger lake, and this was the primary outlet for that bigger lake. So now let's talk about dirt. So this is another look at that trench wall that Jordan and Tom were looking at earlier. And so we know that there's water there. And so in order to understand the relationship of the water and the sediments associated with the channel to the rock shelter, we need to dig a big trench and get a look at it and do a sediment profile of that whole system. And what we can see here, this is about 4 meters deep here. We can see those stream gravels that are kind of brownish gray down, undulating surface kind of associated with this line here. We can see those marsh clays that are right here. And then above the marsh clays, we have windblown sediments that are about 2 to 2.5 meters thick. And so what's very cool about this whole setting is that on top of this marsh clay, we have a pristine deposit of Mazama ash, which is from the eruption that formed Crater Lake about 7,700 years ago. The wind blew Mazama ash from the eruption over this direction and it settled on that marsh clay and made a nice fine bead that is very distinctive and very pure, indicating it was just right out of the volcano. So here's that Mazama ash. The dates are changing. People were using 7,600 for a time, and now they're talking about 7,800, 7,700, 7,800. But actually, it's right between 76 and 7,700 years before present. So you can see that primary Mazama ash as a fine, clear, distinct white band right above the marsh clay. And then up above it is windblown Mazama ash, this whole layer right here. That is blowing in off of those playas that I showed you the picture of, Hay Lake and Wheatgrass and Rimrock Lake, and off of the surface of the surrounding, and it's coming in and blowing in on top of this. And then we have sand and silt and other ashes over time that have been deposited as well. But this is such a beautiful time marker in that stratigraphic setting at Rimrock Draw, both in the rock shelter and in the stream channel. And so everything above this is more recent, and everything below it is older than about 7,700 years in age. So this is Jake. He's doing some profiling, and it's just another look at that stream. that profile in that trench that we were excavating. So you can see that that marsh clay was very thick also, very distinct, and then you can see that we're digging down into those gravels underneath. So stream gravel, marsh clay, windblown sediment with Mazon in between. So these are some dates that we have associated with that profile. The top date is taken in the marsh clay just below the Mazama ash, and you can see that this is one of Stafford's dates, and you can see that the dates are 7,600 to close to 7,700, right along with the eruption of Mazama, and they extend downward into the 11 to 12,000 year range. And below that, we have a date on bison tooth of 13,000. That shows the stream channel. The last big flush of the stream channel is 13,000 years ago. A lot of dates just around a lot of the natural and cultural setting at you all at once, just so we can kind of get somewhere with the dates that we're going to report in a little bit. And then inside the rock shelter, the Mazama ash is more muffled because people were living there and their feet were shuffling around and kicking the dirt back and forth. And so you can see here that we have that windblown sediment up here. You can see those marsh clays are kind of a reddish brown here. And then you can start to see in this picture of Unit 2 where the roof fall from when the brow of the rock shelter collapsed and protected the sediments that were underneath. So this is the stuff that's in the 10,000 year range up here, down into the marsh place here, and then down below here we have the sediments that have the virulence up into Pleistocene. So as we talk about things here more in the next part of this, we're going to be concentrating on materials that have come out of Unit 2, Unit 30, and Units 18 and 19. Because what we can see here is we have certain Pleistocene herbivore teeth coming out of Unit 2 and 30, and we have others that are coming out of Unit 19 and 18, and then we have spring deposits that are over here. We won't get into those tonight, but in particular, you can see that there's 3 to 5 meters of separation between Unit 30 and Units 18 and 19. And so what we're picking up from one side to the other is very distinctive and very orderly in terms of stratigraphy. So the questions: how did the humans use the rock shelter? How old is the site? What were the geologic influences? And what's the paleo-environmental context for the site? So let's look at the gear. When our Oregon Archaeological Society volunteers went out and did their surveys, and during the course of our excavations for the field school, we have seen that there is a strong distinction between the types of stone tools that are diagnostic that we're finding at the site. So in terms of diagnostic tools, we found actually closer to 12 stone tools now that were made clearly after 6,500 years ago, and everything else appears to have been made before that time. So over 100 different kinds of stone tools and diagnostic flakes that are distinctive of Paleo-American or Clovis type technology are the dominant artifacts that are found at the site. And so in the Northern Great Basin, in Oregon and other areas, elko points are the most common points that you find anywhere. If you were to take a walk in the desert and have a look at things that are stone tools that are being found on the surface, 7 out of 10 would be elko points because the people were widespread that were using those points and very populous. Here at this site, We only have 6 of those, and that's a real anomaly. That suggests that people were not coming to this site after 6,500 years ago, and it may be correlated with the eruption of Mount Masama. It may have done something to damage the hydrology of the stream channel, make it so that water wasn't available, and things became more desertic, and we have a windblown material that shows that that was the case. So the artifacts are telling us the same sort of story, and that is really an interesting correlation and kind of hard to come across in Great Basin archaeology. So here's some of the stem points. These are both from surface collections and excavations. They're typified as Western stem points, and the average dates are between about 12,000 to 8,000 BP in the literature. At Paisley Cave, they find these points back to about 15,000 years. And we are looking at the stratigraphic distinctions in the rock shelter and trying to parse out just how old these are in that location. So we would put them comfortably in that 7,500 to 15,000. Most of the points that you see here are broken. People are carrying these, recovering their spears or their atlatl darts and bringing those to this site and then stripping them off of the ends of the dart shafts and spear shafts and replacing them and leaving the old broken ones behind. Glass Buttes, which is a prominent obsidian source, is about 10 miles away, and it's one of the most high quality obsidians found anywhere in Western North America. And it was just right at their doorstep. So we would expect to see lots of Glass Buttes at this location. These are some other different kinds of points that are associated with Western stem technology. This is Black Rock concave base. These are both wind dust. These are square-based stem points that we would assign to Parman type 2. And these are variants in between. The stem points don't have notched bases in general. You can see there's notches here for doing obsidian hydration dating of these artifacts. But in general, stem points have the blade that is separated by weak shoulders, like this one here and this one here. Let's see, going back to that previous, you can see these all have shoulders here and here. So they're very distinctive. They tend not to be notched, and they tend to be in that 7,500 to 15,000 year time range when considered against modern archaeological evidence. Down in the deeper portions of the rock shelter, we get into some specialized stone tools that are made out of really high quality chert and jasper, what we call cryptocrystalline silicate. These include gravers that are multi-pointed. They have multiple spurs for making designs on bone or wood in the form of like a compass. They have concave scraping edges or convex scraping edges. They have spurs for incising holes in objects, or they have perforators like this one. These are what you would consider the stone tools of a master craftsperson. These are not the things that people carry as a regular part of their toolkit. These are things that are for specialized use. So it tells us that the people that were coming here to this site in very early times were had some specific activities in mind. And I find these points or these types of stone tools to be more interesting than diagnostic projectile points, simply because they tell something more about the activities of the people that were using that site. Everybody was having, everybody was carrying projectile points, but these tell another story. And the other thing we found is down in the deepest deposits of Unit 2, chalcedony stone tool that is like a Swiss Army knife. So it has a serrated edge here. It has a fairly flat cutting edge here, or I'm sorry, a slightly convex cutting edge here and fairly flat cutting edge right here. And this is a beautiful high quality tool stone. And it was found underneath, in sediments underneath camel tooth enamel fragment that dates to 18,300 calibrated years. So this may be among the oldest tools in North American archaeology. And it's just beautiful. I was going to try and sneak it up there. I was afraid that I might get it taken away from the plane or something. So maybe it's probably for the best. And then the other thing we have at the rock shelter are crescents. And crescents are things that we find in the Northern Great Basin. Obviously, they have a crescentic shape. They have a very specific purpose, and they're found commonly near shallow lake shorelines. So when you see a crescent out in the desert country, start looking for the shorelines and start looking for the things that would suggest that people were gathering marshland resources or hunting marshland animals, different, ducks, fish, whatever. They may have been handheld as like a cutting edge for cutting bundles of bulrush or cattail. There's some talk that they were used as a transverse point for launching at-level darts at waterfowl. But whatever the purpose, they're very distinctive. And when we saw these coming out of the rock shelter and the area around the rock shelter, we started looking for the big lake that belonged with these artifacts. So the artifacts that we're seeing at the site are telling us a story that's very specific about the time period when the site was used. And these artifacts are telling us about the environment where the site was used. And things are starting to come together in a very interesting way. And these fragments here were all from our excavation units. So we have 150 different kinds of obsidian, geochemically sourceable obsidian that is in Oregon and in surrounding areas. And at Rimrock Draw Rock Shelter, we can see this yellow dot is where the site is. But we can see the majority of that obsidian is found within about 50 miles of the site, and much of it is quite a bit closer. And then we can see that there's obsidian coming from Venator, which is over quite a ways to the east. Whitewater Ridge is well to the north and up in the forests towards the Ochoco Mountains. Silver Lake and Suttercan Marsh is over well to the west. Cobham Butte is over near Paisley Cave. And then we have Alturas fine grain volcanic from California and Coyote Spring obsidian from Nevada. So most of the obsidian that's being used is from the area around the rock shelter, but there's some that's coming from the south and from the north. So now let's talk about rocks. So I'm kind of going through this, talking about the water, the dirt, the rocks, just putting the pieces together. Let's see. So in the area where the windblown deposits were located, we are getting dates that are between 4,500 and 10,000 years ago. Most of the older dates are down near a layer of rock that's buried. It looks like it was from roof fall that occurred over 10,000 years ago. So now let's look at what happens under the rock fall. We're going to look more specifically at Unit 2 that we finished excavating in 2012. and units 18 and 19 that we excavated up until 2020. So here's unit 2, and this is the quadrants where we started getting lots of Pleistocene and tooth fragments, and then this is units 18 and 19. So there's 3 to 5 meters of separation between these. Some of the rocks were pretty big, and because we had a small budget and strong students, we spent quite a bit of time splitting rocks with wedges and feathers, and breaking them into smaller pieces and then lifting them up and out of the excavation area. The reason we did this is because we could tell that the sediments that were deposited on top of these boulders and these rocks that are in this excavation area were not covered with clay or oxidized material like you would expect on top of bedrock. There was percolation, there was leaching that was going on, that was carrying down below into closer to bedrock. And so we figured that these rocks indicated that we weren't there at the bottom yet, and that there might be buried deposits underneath it that could be really interesting. So this Terry Paddock, he came out and taught us how to split rocks with wedges and feathers, and here he is going to town on that. So in 2012 and get 2, after we got the rocks removed, there below those red arrows, we had students that were down excavating underneath there. So you can see there's a lot of rocks sticking out of the wall that were removed or split out to clear an excavation space. And those students are working down clay sands that have lots of interesting stuff in them. That was unit 2. This is in unit 19. So this is 3 to 5 meters to the west. And you can see on 220 to 225 centimeters, we're just now starting to clear off the top layer of piled up accumulated boulders that are covering old buried surface. After we broke through that surface, it got down into the 265 to 270 centimeter range. We started to find fragments of bison teeth here in unit 19, and camel teeth and bison teeth too. So the sediments are damp, but they are not. Some of the sediments in some areas dried out frequently, and so preservation is not very good in most areas of the rock shelter. The tooth enamel was one thing you could always expect to find well preserved because it has a high mineral content, very little organic material in it. And so we concentrated on tooth enamel. Tom Stafford explained to us that you could do radiocarbon dating on tooth enamel. So when we started picking up quantities of it, that was very exciting because then we could actually start to think about getting dates in an area having poor organic preservation. So those are just a quick look at the rocks that we had to bust through to get into the bottom layers of the site. And now let's talk a little bit about those plants that we were also seeing. So in the upper deposits of the site, we have concentrated, well, not concentrated, uniformly distributed charcoal fragments of fuel woods that are associated with cooking fires and warming fires. And so out there on the country, you see sagebrush, rabbitbrush, and juniper today, and we see those throughout the deposits. But in the fire pits that are associated with stone tools and archaeological concentrations, we see those same fuel woods, but we also see medicinal and utilitarian plants for making basketry, matting, things of that sort, food items. So we see those fuel woods, plus we see willow, serviceberry, chokecherry, bitterbrush, Those are all upland, what we would consider upland plants today, where you find those at the kind of mid-range between the forests and the area sagebrush steppe. And then we saw bulrush, waterville, and hardwood. We also had a plant called wada, and those are plants. Those three in particular are plants that we expect to see near big lakes or standing bodies of water. So this is bulrush. This is looking down at a surface that's producing lots of charcoal. And as we collected the charcoal and had it sent to a paleobotanist for examination, she found burned bulrush seeds, and we radiocarbon dated those to 9,400 radiocarbon calibrated years. And then in these lenses of charcoal right here in the sidewall of Unit 2, we found Waikato seeds, which is known as Indian potato. And those seeds were also burned, and they dated to right around 10,000 years. And then you can see the concentration of rock that's underneath the area where we were trying to first plant. So you've already seen these dates, so I'm just going to blow right on through that. And then we'll talk about the animals. So this is where we come back to our radiocarbon dates, our AMS radiocarbon dates. And so when you look at this list of radiocarbon dates below the rockfall, the dates that are in black text are dates that are associated with the first round of radiocarbon dates that we did on tooth enamel from the site. All of those were done by Tom Stafford. So those range between 13,000 bison teeth, 17,000, 2 dates of 17,000 on bison teeth, and then 18,361 camera tooth enamel. That was the first date we ran on the camera material from the site. And when we saw that 18,000 year date come back, we were like, wait a minute. We have 18,000 year date on the site. We have that orange chalcedony stone tool underneath it. We have an anecdote, but we don't necessarily have data based on that single radiocarbon date. So when we ran that camel tooth enamel date, we came back and decided we needed to rerun all these dates before we started talking about these publicly. And so we took samples of those same objects, those same tooth enamel fragments, and reran those dates, which are shown here in red. And so the second run of this bison tooth produced a calibrated date that was 45 years older than the one that we produced previously. The second piece of bison tooth was 200 years older, and a third fragment of bison tooth was 115 years younger. So what we're looking at here is over the course of radiocarbon dates that are coming back in the 18,000 year range, we have dates that are coming within 45 to 200 years of what the original ones were. So we could actually start talking about these dates as being something that was real, and our initial dates that Tom Graham were confirmed by these. So then we could start talking about this idea, and this is being something that was in the 18,000 year time range. We ran another date from the same location that we got the first camel tooth. We did one date on a bison tooth that came back within 85 years of this 18,000 year time range. And then we did a second camel tooth that we found in the year 30 that was 175 years older than the original camel tooth. So now we have two, I'm sorry, we have two radiocarbon dates on camel teeth and one radiocarbon date on bison teeth. They're all from unit 2, and they're all in the 18,000 year time range. And we have multiple dates on bison teeth from unit 19, and they're in the 17,000 year range. So after we did that, we found another piece of camel tooth that we dated, and it came back 18,000 years. So very similar to this one, and another bison tooth from unit 19 that was 17,000. So what we've done now is we've taken multiple pieces of Pleistocene herbivore teeth and radiocarbon dated those, and they're all coming back from the 17,000 year time range in unit 19 to the 18,000 year time range in unit 2, and they're all associated with stone tools and chipping debris and other materials that indicate that those were deposited at the same time that people were occupying the rock shelters. So there's a human Pleistocene relationship between those objects. And so one of the things that we were worried about when we did those dates was that we hadn't looked at a piece of tooth enamel from an entirely different location than those two general areas. And so we picked a piece of bison tooth that we found in the trench when Oregon Archaeological Society was screening trench debris looking for materials they found in bison tooth fragment. And we did a date on the enamel from that, and it came back in the same general range. The enamel seems to be producing good clear dates. And then we did a date on the dent from the interior pulp of the bison tooth and found out that that was more recent. So the dent, which is more porous and can absorb carbonates more easily than the enamel, was producing a date on the same specimen. It was a couple thousand years more recent than the date on the enamel. So here's some of that bison tooth that is subjected to radiocarbon dating from the trench. And so how big a piece of material are we using for the dating? Well, we're doing some studies on Amylogena, which I hope to talk about here tonight. And so it takes 20 milligrams of powdered enamel to get DNA information, and also 20 milligrams of solid enamel. But this is the size of a piece of tooth enamel that's required for AMS 14C dating. And this is 200 milligrams of solid enamel. This were all prepared by Stafford for this project. And so these are this is the tooth enamel that dates to 18,300 from unit 2. And this is that same chalcedony stone tool that was found 10 centimeters underneath that, below the rock fall. So when you look at those pictures of the rock fall and what we had to do to remove those rocks, and see that we have a flake tool that's 10 centimeters below this camel tooth enamel, you can be fairly well assured that those have remained in position for quite some time. And then above this tooth enamel was Mount St. Helens volcanic ash, another 10 centimeters above that. It was from the 15,200 year eruption at Mount St. Helens. So in an orderly stratigraphic sequence, we have 15,300 at Mount St. Helens. We have 18,300 year old tooth and the fragment from the camel. And then 10 centimeters underneath that, we have this stone tooth. So here's a gathering an aggregate of the tooth enamel from unit 2. This is a piece that we dated in a person's hand. I'm going to be honest, I picked up a student who had a small hand, so it would really exaggerate the size of that tooth enamel, but okay, it's still a really large piece of tooth enamel. And then this is the that same piece of tooth enamel in association with a maxillary fragment from a fossilized camel from the Juntura Formation, about 80 miles east of the site where we're working at. So when we did comparisons between the tooth enamel and the camel, forage, and the bison, other Pleistocene animals, there's no comparison. This is clearly from the camel. And Greg McDonald, who is the paleontologist for the Bureau of Land Management, national paleontologist, confirmed this identification as well. So here is the tooth enamel that was before it was sampled. This is a piece that was taken off for the radiocarbon, AMS radiocarbon dating. And then this is the cross section of that same piece of tooth enamel before Tom started using a micro drill to remove the organic apatite or the apatite that contains organic materials that can be radiocarbon dated. This is it in front section. So the camel tooth enamel was found in Unit 2 between 263 and 275 centimeters below datum. The bison tooth enamel in Unit 18 was found from 263 to 265 centimeters below datum. So these are 3 to 5 meters apart from each other, these two excavation units. And these stratigraphic, this vertical separation is only a couple of centimeters from one side to the other. It suggests that this deposit that contains the tooth enamel from both of those events was deposited around the same time. And then in 2021, this is the new incisor we found in Unit 30. You can see that this has a root missing, but this incisor is from camelops, and this is in comparison to about a 1,200-pound bison, male bison, and this is from elk. So just in terms of scale, you can see how large that camel incisor is next to these two animals. So the camelops, we have 3 separate tests that put the dates in the 18,250 to 18,600 range. From two different specimens, and then we have bison for 3 separate tests. More now, actually, that are in the 17,000, almost 18,000 to 17,000 year time range. And then this is that piece of tooth I was telling you about that is was tested to, so Stafford did a testing on the enamel and it came back 12,225 radiocarbon years. He did testing on the dent and it came back 10,860. So we can tell that the enamel is the place that we would get the best radiocarbon dates. And this dent, because it is porous and can soak in carbonates more easily, doesn't produce as reliable a data. Other things that we studied, well, these are some of the flakes that were found in association with the bison tooth enamel. So we have camel teeth enamel and bison teeth enamel. We have blood residues on horses, bison, and mountain sheep. So these tools that are down there with the bison tooth enamel fragments were used. They have blood residues that indicate that they are coming from other Pleistocene extent species. And just this is interesting too, because from unit 2, this is that chalcedony stone tool that is so old. This is a piece of the same material from unit 19, about 5 meters away. And then the morphology of these stone tools. This particular chalcedony stone tool had bison blood residue on it. This big obsidian flake tool that's shaped similarly and has multiple cutting edges has horse blood residue on it. So the latest is based on what we've been seeing at the site. The deepest archaeology is pristine. It's not redeposited, and we can tell that through the relationship of those orange chalcedony stone tools and other archaeology finding in 2 units in association with large Pleistocene herbivore tooth enamel. Those tooth enamel fragments are concentrated between 263 and 275 centimeters below the datum in both locations. Stone tools are show use associated with Ice Age animals, and then the blood residues that I just talked about. And the stratigraphic layers are tied very closely together. The layers look and are the layers look the same in terms of sedimentary composition, are the same across the rock shelter within a few centimeters of each other. So why were people here? Remark Draw is a place that people used between the end of the Pleistocene and the eruption of Mount Megafauna. The archaeology tells us that people stopped coming here before about around or before 6,500 years ago, which around the time within 1,000 years of the eruption of Mount Megafauna. There was flowing water, lots of it, in the stream channel up until about 13,000 years ago. There was a cienega or a stable marsh that was between about 13,000 and the eruption of Megafauna. And that seems to have been the peak time of use, was when that marsh was there, based on the concentration levels of artifacts they were seen in association with those marsh clays. Mazama, it looks like Mazama may have killed the hydrologic unit of the stream channel and spring sources, reduce the amount of water. So even with Blast Buttes, so one of the best obsidian sources anywhere around, 10 miles away, people were not coming to this place at all. And that's just really fascinating. So there's a story that's being told, and it's a pretty clear story. In terms of archaeology, usually the patterns are much messier, but these patterns seem to be pretty clean. So the contributors that have been involved in this project are many. The University of Oregon's been a big one, the Bureau of Land Management, or the Oregon Archaeological Society volunteers, and many people from the vicinity, from Kearney County and surrounding areas, and all of those researchers, people that have come to see us at the site on an annual basis. They know that it's field school season, and we have visitors from another project to a great place. And there's the crew with our diagnostic chart, talking about the stone tools from the early Pleistocene, or from the late Pleistocene to the late Pleistocene. So that's what I've got, and I'd be happy to answer questions.